That's hard. So, one of the things I was thinking about was, some of you know that we spent some time out at the Grand Canyon. Okay? What a blast that was. I mean, it was only 4.5 months. But one of the things I really enjoyed doing this time out at the Grand Canyon, something I hadn't done before, was going down into the Grand Canyon. They say only a small percentage of any of the visitors to the Grand Canyon actually get to go down into the Grand Canyon. And I did, and eventually I got to go all the way down to the bottom of the Grand Canyon. But at first it was just little short trips. You know why? Because there were signs everywhere. And these signs, well, one of them was showing some guy throwing up, you know, I'm not sure. That didn't encourage me too much. But actually there was another sign that said, going down is optional. Going back up is mandatory. So if you get any idea about this, it's hard sometimes to count the cost as you're walking down into the canyon. You go past people that are coming up and they look really exhausted. And you go, hey, I don't know what your problem is. So far, so good, right? I'm doing just well, just fine, right? But every so often I would turn around and look up, thinking, I got to go that way one of these fine days, right? So finally you get to the bottom, or you get down to wherever it is that you finally say, it's time for me to turn around. Because with every step going one way, you need to be counting the cost coming the other way. So it's not going to be easy. But I'm here to tell you that there is, and Jesus said it many times, there's a cost to following him. And we got to take a look at that. What is that cost? Is it just a Sunday morning? I might be able to pay that. We'll do that. You know, what is the cost to follow Jesus? Matthew chapter 16, beginning in verse 21. That's where we're going to start. Jesus preached on sometimes what it takes to follow him. A few weeks ago, I preached on the topic, would-be followers of Jesus. There's a lot of people that want to follow Jesus. There's a lot of people who think it's a good idea. I like the idea of being a Christian. I like the idea of following Jesus. I like the idea of singing the praise songs. And I like all that kind of stuff. And when they approach Jesus about following him, 3 out of 3 he discouraged. Why? Why would he do that? Because he knew that they were not ready or willing to pay the price. I can't tell you where you stand in your relationship to the Lord. That's totally between you and him. So whatever it is, you know, I'm here to help, but sometimes if it's excuses, you talk to him. You tell him, right? And so we look at the cost of following Jesus, starting in verse 21, chapter 16. So he said, from that time, Jesus began to show to his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer. You can underline that word. Suffer. Just a side note, does anybody preach the sufferings of following Jesus anymore? I mean, you hear about all the name it, claim it, you get this, you get that, you're gonna inherit everything. It's going to be nothing but a wonderful, sunshiny life if you follow Jesus. A bed of roses, if you will. But for some reason, this word here says, and suffer. Now, if Jesus suffered, what does the Bible say about us following him? That we too will experience the same things that he experienced. So don't think differently about that. I want you to get you on the right side. And suffer many things from the elders and chief priests and scribes, and be killed and be raised the third day. Then Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. Can you even imagine that? Rebuking Jesus? What was he thinking? Saying, far be it from you, Lord, this shall not happen to you. But he turned and said to Peter, get behind me, Satan. Now, I got to just say this on. I wonder how Peter felt. Because just before this event, Jesus said, who do you say that I am? And Peter was the one who said, thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus said, blessed art thou, Simon, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father in heaven has shared this great truth with you of who I am. And then when Jesus said this, immediately Peter jumps on, and Jesus said, "Get thee behind me, Satan." On the one hand, he just said, "God just blessed you." On the other hand, he says, "Satan's trying to use you." Oh my goodness. So quick. So, "You are an offense to me, for you are not mindful of the things of God." I want you to underline, mindful of the things of God, but the things of men. You're thinking wrong, Peter. And folks, I got to tell you, sometimes we come to church, we want to hear something that's going to encourage us so that we know we're going to be blessed, we're going to get this, we're going to get that. Now, those are things of men, or the things of God. Then Jesus said to his disciples, "If anyone desires to come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever desires to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. For what profit is it to a man if he gains the whole world and loses his own soul?
That's right.
Or what will a man give in exchange for his soul? For the Son of Man will come in the glory of his Father with his angels, and then he will reward each according to his works." You want to underline that one too? According to his works. Are we, we don't believe in works salvation, but we do believe in the sense that when we're saved, we'll act like it. We'll do like it. And as we've talked about in Sunday school, hopefully each one of you who are trusting in Jesus, that if somebody wanted to bring a case against you that you were a Christian in some country where it was illegal to be so, I hope they can find you guilty.
That's right.
Okay? "Assuredly I say to you, there are some standing here who shall not taste death till they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom." Well, the cost of following Jesus. We talked about this in our Sunday school class for a moment. It reminded us of a game that many of us play, Follow the Leader. And sometimes, depending on who the leader was, his goal was to make it difficult for you to follow him so that you might fall out and that he would then win by that. But that's not the idea here. All right? We're to follow him because we are attached to him, because we become part of him. We are to become Christians, Christ-like. We are to become like Jesus. And the only way we can do that is by following closely with him, following his lead in our life. That's that whole thing we talked about some time back. What would Jesus do? And I'm just wondering, what are we doing each day that is putting ourselves out in order to further God's kingdom, somehow or other, accomplishing his tasks and his purposes in our life? So the first point that I have here is suffering is mandatory in following Jesus. I don't understand this. If I just said that, how many people are going to have sign up? What kind of a thing is this that is encouraging people to say, "Oh, that's me, that's what I want"? You mean following Jesus requires, it's mandatory? I used that term, I was asking Diane about that. I think she said, well, maybe mandatory might be a little harsh, but I still used it anyhow. I don't know. But it is kind of harsh, isn't it? It's mandatory. You must suffer if you're going to continue to follow Jesus. Not suffering for suffering's sake. No, don't get me wrong. There are some people who like that idea of being able to say, I've suffered for Jesus. But no, it's because you want to do what God has called us to do, that there will be some rough things to go through. Because you know what? The world hated him, and they will not like us either. That's right. It's just the sacred. So when I think about that, Peter didn't even fully realize this, did he? Jesus starts telling him, now listen, I'm going to suffer, which Peter might have realized, oh, does that mean that we who are your followers will suffer also? Hold on. Now I do know, I remember that Peter said to Jesus, think about this for a moment, said to Jesus, I will die for you. Remember that? He thought there was going to be an uprising. There was going to be he was going to lead his people, and Peter said, I'm willing to go into battle and die for you. And in fact, when he got arrested, it was Peter that cut off the ear of the one that was there, right? He was ready to go to battle. He was ready to fight. But there was a time later on where he said, no, wait a minute, this isn't fitting with my ideas. And then he denied Jesus 3 times. So I can't help but think, here's Peter. One hand he's cutting off somebody's ear, next time he's denying Jesus to a maiden. It seemed like Peter was up and down and a little bit inconsistent. Does that sound familiar at all? Do you ever think that there are some times when you're ready to just go to battle for the Lord, go and do whatever it is He's called you to do? I remember when I was first saved, oh my goodness, I got up in front of a church and I said, Don Broker is dead. Well, you know what? That turkey got back again once in a while. And he just sort of stands up and says, wait a minute, I still want to be counted, I still want to do this or that. But I thought it was interesting in our Sunday school class when they said, you know what? It's about giving up on our dreams, on our desires. It's about accepting His calling upon our life. Are you willing to do that today? That's a hard task to be asked to do. But anyhow, so suffering is mandatory in following Jesus. I'll give you a little example, something that I'm a little bit familiar with, and that is the idea of signing up, say, for an Ironman. Anybody know what the Ironman is? Okay. So there's the full Ironman. Never did that. Not sure I'd be willing to sign on the dotted line for that one. The full Ironman means you swim 2.4 miles, right? Yeah, you bike 112, and then you run a full marathon. Okay. And when people sign up for that, they better know it's going to hurt. It's going to be painful. I put it on my Facebook page. I was going to show it here, then I thought, nah, maybe not. But it was the time where a young lady by the name of Julie Moss. I don't know if any of you ever remember who she is. But back when the Ironman was just getting started, it was like the third or fourth year. And she did it as an assignment from her class. She was a college student. And she ran in it. And for some strange reason, she found herself in the lead for women, right? And she kept looking back, couldn't believe where she was. But her body began to break down as she was running. If you want to see something, you go pull up the name Julie Moss. When she gets close to the end, she falls down. I've never seen her. I mean, she is really looking sad. I mean, pathetic. Her body is disappointing her big time, and she is falling to the ground. She is crawling. She's getting back up again. She's running like kind of sporadic here, there. She falls again. And she eventually, at the very end, there's somebody who was behind her, ran past her, and won. Do you know who that was? No, I don't either. Because everybody knows the name Julie Moss. Because she crawled across that finish line and was an inspiration to so many people. You know what? I don't understand this. But there was a ton of people after that said, I'm signing up for the Ironman because of what I saw Julie Moss do in that race. Oh, you want to know something? There are people who can be inspired also by how you handle doing what God has called you to do, no matter the cost. Okay? When they see you suffering for the sake of His kingdom, suffering for the sake of His calling upon your life, some people are going to say, that must be very real. I want to do that too. I want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of something so special that I'm willing to give my entire life for it. So following Jesus, suffering is mandatory in following Jesus. Well, there's just no shortcuts, folks, and I don't know why we take it. David Platt, some of you may know who he is. He's a pastor. Used to be at one time the president of the International Mission Board. And when he was pastoring this church, he walked into this church, by the way, and it was a mega church. Okay, he'd just come back from being over in China. He didn't use the name at that time, it was years ago, but I knew it was China. And he talked about what it cost to worship and even just go and be with other believers in China. Sometimes it would cost them their life. It surely cost them their comfort, and they had to walk many times to get there and all that stuff. And so he was telling the story, and when he walked in to report to this huge mega Baptist church, he said he walked in, and as he drove, first of all, as he drove to park, there were all these and you just tell me what an expensive car would be. I don't know. Yeah. Oh, those are probably the easy ones. I mean, who knows what they were worth thousands and thousands of dollars. And when he walked into the foyer, there was a chandelier there that probably would take care of the expenses of Calvary for some years to come. Okay. And he just said, something doesn't seem right. I just came from serving, Jesus of Nazareth, who walked everywhere, didn't drive some of those fancy cars or whatever, and was willing to just take whatever came his way in order to pay the price that we required him to pay. And so he said, I had a real hard time. But while he was there, he kept preaching to this church, and then they started doing a thing what they called the the secret church. Thank you. I knew the word escaped. The secret church. Look it up. He brought these people into this fancy church, and he says, I can't, I don't know what I can do. We've got the padding on the pews and all that stuff to get them to, but they had to stay there for hours. I won't keep you that long, but nonetheless, I mean, he went through the teachings of the whole Bible at times, just covering section after section, because that's what they wanted when he was in China. They hungered for the word when he was in China. But here, folks, it was like, oh, can't we go and take a break? Can't we go and get some food? Can't we go and get some water? That whole thing. But it's the whole idea of the cost of following Jesus. There's no shortcuts, folks. But let me just say this. The next one is following Jesus involves Jesus first. Okay, verse 23. Take a look. He said, you are an offense to me, speaking to Peter, for you are not mindful of the things of God, but the things of men. We need to put the things of God first, not the things of men. That's awfully hard. We have to put Jesus first. Right now in our country, you know what's going on, right? I mean, the whole thing. I saw some people, by the way, it wasn't even Make America Great, it was America First. And so we've got this whole thing out there. And listen, I'm not going to sit there and go into a lot of details about that, but I'm going to tell you something. No, it's not America First, I'm sorry. Not in my opinion, anyhow. You know what it is? Jesus first. That's right. Jesus first. And if we have the other, then sometimes we're going to make a choice that doesn't honor Jesus, but honors something about our country or something else. I'm sorry. If you think that means I'm not a patriot, I did serve in the military. I mean, I don't know. But to tell you the truth, my citizenship, you know where my citizenship is? My citizenship is in heaven. I'm sorry, but that's where I belong. That's who I'm going to identify with. That's who I want to glorify. You know what? Amen. It's going to always be Jesus first. So I don't mind when I saw some of those hats that said America First, I just as soon give it. Does anybody have a hat that says Jesus First? I'm going to take it, That's what I want, and I want to focus on that. Because you see, when we were over in China, there was a lot of different things. I would tell people when they come, all right, you're coming from America. You're representing America. Oh boy. Now I'm wondering, should I have even mentioned that at all? Should that have even played any part into it? But what I said was, but first and foremost, you represent Jesus. First and foremost, you represent Christianity. That's what I want them to see. Now, if you're doing well representing Jesus, and you're doing well representing Christianity, then I'm sure you'll be just fine to let people know that you're American. It shouldn't be too much of an embarrassment, like that. But the truth is, I want to say to you, let's put Jesus first. Can we get that way? Can we become the kind of people that put him first? Okay? Now, have you ever heard of this saying before? I want to be not a fan of Jesus. I want to be a follower of Jesus. Have you ever seen that book? There's a book out, it's been out for a long time, it says, Not a Fan. You see, if we're not careful, we just think Christianity is kind of cool. We just think Christianity is kind of acceptable in my circles. I'm a fan of Christianity. No, because that's not good enough, folks. It wasn't good enough for Jesus. It's just not, should not be good enough for us. We are to be followers of Jesus. You know what? That's radical. So I want to get back to this David Blatt story. He wrote a book called Radical. And what happened was, and every so often I want to say to David, I want to call him up and say, hey, David, what are you doing now that demonstrates your radical life for Jesus? But I'm not going to do that. Because you know why? Because I'm going to ask myself that question. What am I doing to show that I'm being radical, that I'm dying to self, that I'm doing something that I wouldn't do under any other circumstances? So that's what I want you to say to yourself. What about me? Where am I in walking the path with Jesus? What is it that I'm doing? Diane came up. You saw. She said that song always gets to her. But I said to her, okay, soon we're going to have a little bit of free time. You know? What are we going to do? What are we going to do that says it's radical for Jesus? And I don't know exactly. But I hope that when somebody hears us say that we're doing it, they're going to go, you're doing what? You know, and not just preaching off the roof. That might be, my wife said, well, you're doing what? But no, I want somebody to say you're doing what because you're doing this at what age? I just want to challenge you. Following Jesus involves Jesus first. And not as a fan, but you are a follower. So I'm going to ask you this. What describes you? What describes you? I'm almost done here. So just think about this for a moment. What describes you? Look at, it says, are you mindful of the things of God or mindful of the things of men? You know, you might say, well, you know what? I wrote this down. I'm an American. Yeah, I know. I have an American passport. That's, when I go some places, I'm an American. I'm also a preacher. That's what I do. You know, men, when they get together, women, when they get together, by the way, they talk about how many kids do you have? You know, they talk about your family and stuff like that. Men, you know what we talk about, right? What do you do for a living? That's where we identify, right? There's a whole thing. So I'm a preacher. Yeah, okay. All right. Is that good? Also, by the way, I do say that I'm a papa. It means I'm a grandfather. I put that before I'm a dad. But I'm also a dad. Oh, here's one that I don't always tell people about. I'm a Baptist. I don't always tell everybody that. But you know what? How about this one? I'm a Christian. Okay? That it should precede all of these because I want to be a Christian papa. I want to be a Christian dad. I want to be a Christian Baptist? Okay. Anyhow, I want to live as a Christian first and foremost. Is that what we're doing? I need to be following Jesus. Now, I wanted to spend a little time with this, but I really don't have that much time, so I want to give you an assignment to think about. Anybody of you ever hear about a guy by the name of Constantine? So he was one of the first emperors of Rome back in the 300 AD who became a Christian, became a follower of Jesus. You know what he did? He made Christianity now legal, because it was illegal in his day. The people were actually being, if they followed Christ, you could be persecuted, you could be put to death, you could be thrown in jail, all those kinds of things. It's illegal. And by the way, in some countries it still is illegal. You know that, right? Yeah. To worship Jesus, to be a Christian, it's illegal. Now, it's not necessarily illegal in China, but it sure is compromised. It sure is controlled. And if you're not in that mix, then you can easily be persecuted for following Jesus Christ and worshiping Him where you want, when you want, how you want, all that kind of stuff. You can be persecuted, and they are being persecuted. They are being beaten. They are being thrown in jail. And here's what I want you to think about. You know what they said to me? Pastor, pray for us, but don't pray that the persecution stops. Pray that we can endure the persecution. Now, I mentioned Constantine because one of the things that happened was persecution stopped under him. And a lot of people who weren't real believers said they were believers. They got in with the in crowd. Okay? And there was a lot of other things that began to take place. And in fact, the government began to put money into some Christian endeavors. Is that a bad thing? I don't know. But you know who ought to be supporting the Christian causes? Christians. Okay? All I'm saying here is that it's important for us to take a look. Would it be a good thing for Christianity to be legal and not have any persecution in the whole world? I don't know. But in China, where it's not, people are still getting saved left and right. In Japan, where it's legal, there is a very small percentage of followers for Jesus. I don't understand it, but all I know is through the shed blood of other believers, they call them martyrs, on the lives and the deaths of martyrs, the church has grown. Read the book of Acts. In fact, that's one of the things it said. Jesus said to the people, "Go into all the world and make disciples." And they said, "No, thanks." And then persecution came, and they went, and they made disciples in other places. Well, that's a study for another day to find out. Is it all right for it to cost us something dearly to follow Jesus, or should it be a superhighway? Last point. Following Jesus means to deny self. In the Gospel of John, chapter 12, verse 24, it says, "Unless a seed fall on the ground and die, it will not bring forth any fruit." You cannot still be yourself to be a follower of Jesus. You got to put self in the background. You've got to put self crucified. "I am crucified with Christ. Nevertheless, I live. Yet not I, but Christ liveth in me. And this life I now live in the flesh, I live by the faith of the Son of God, who gave himself for me." Okay? Well, that's how we're supposed to be. How are we doing? Because when we are willing to sacrifice, when we are willing to die to ourselves, people see that. Because then they begin to see Jesus instead of you. All right? It's very important. And so, when I think about it, there was one story I heard about the person that, unless a seed fall on the ground and die, there was a guy by the name of Robert Thomas back in the 1800s. He was a missionary to China. Believe it or not, back then, there were hardly any Christians in Korea. Okay, now this is the whole country of Korea, North and South Korea. It was all one at the time. And they were very anti-Christian, the whole country. Just a small percentage. And this one guy wanted to go there as a missionary. He said, "I'm going to go there," and he went to Pyongyang, which now, as you know, is the capital of North Korea. Wasn't then. He went there with a whole pile of Bibles. And as he was landing, they came and assaulted him, attacked him, and they said that what he did with all these Bibles was because he saw them coming, he just started throwing them out, and hollering the name, "Jesus, Jesus, Jesus." And then he was put to death. Later, they said that this man who came and introduced, who broke through with that shed blood, who broke through with that martyrdom that began to be talked about throughout the people there in Korea. Do you know now that South Korea is probably, I don't know, maybe 90% Christian? I don't know what the percentage is. I could be wrong. Don't check me on that one. I just know that there's a large percentage of people in South Korea that are believers. You see, here's the thing. What price are you willing to pay that Christianity will go forward? What price? Right now, I'm just going to give an invitation. And this is between you and the Lord. What's he calling you to do? It might be something radical. It might be something just intense here in church. But I'm telling you, he is calling you to do something. Something that is different than anybody, than what we just do on a normal basis. Because following Jesus is not easy. Following Jesus requires self-sacrifice. We belong.